The sky above Veyrona shimmered with colors no human had ever seen before. Crystal spires rose like mountains, catching the light of the twin suns and splitting it into a rainbow that danced across the floating gardens below. From far away, the palace looked serene, perfect, untouched by chaos. Yet inside, the royal court was anything but calm. Today was not a normal day. Today, Princess Lyra returned home. Her ship had appeared in the sky at sunrise, descending slowly with its silver hull reflecting the morning light. Courtiers lined the crystal steps, murmuring in anxious tones, their voices carrying the strange musical cadence of Veyronan's speech. The princess had been gone for nearly a full Veyronian cycle, a mission that had taken her to a distant star system where humans were said to dwell. It was a diplomatic mission, one meant to study humans and their capabilities. But the outcome had been entirely unexpected. She was not alone. At the ship's ramp, standing beside Lyra, was a human child. He looked small, almost fragile, with messy brown hair that fell into wide, curious eyes. He carried no weapons, no special devices. He was just a boy, staring at the immense palace around him with awe and a touch of fear. Around him, the Veyronans whispered, their tones rising and falling in musical harmony like a river in motion. Some were shocked, some skeptical, and some simply could not believe their eyes. "Your Highness," said Chancellor Maris, stepping forward with cautious formality, "what is the meaning of this? Who is this human child, and why have you brought him into the palace?" His voice carried authority, but also tension. Every word was measured, precise, yet behind it was the unmistakable tremor of worry. Princess Lyra's expression was calm, her large, translucent eyes shimmering like liquid crystal. She bent slightly to the child, speaking to him in a low, soothing voice, the words incomprehensible to human ears, but carrying warmth and comfort. Then she turned back to the court. "This is Eli," she announced, "and he will be under my protection while he is here. He is not a threat. In fact, I believe he may become one of the greatest allies our world has ever known." A collective gasp moved through the courtiers. Never had a human been brought to Veyrona, much less into the royal palace. Some stepped back, unsure how to respond. Protocols existed for every imaginable diplomatic encounter, but nothing covered a human child in the royal court. Questions buzzed silently. Was he dangerous? Could he even survive here? Could they trust Lyra's judgment? Eli's eyes were wide, taking in everything at once. Crystal pillars towered above him, glowing with an inner light. Floating gardens drifted lazily through the palace atrium, leaves shimmering in translucent colors he could not name. Veyronans moved gracefully, their skin reflecting the colors around them, shifting from pale violet to deep azure, communicating through gestures and subtle changes in hue. He felt like he had stepped into a dream, one that was beautiful but completely incomprehensible. He stepped forward slowly, careful not to touch anything, careful not to draw attention. I'm just Eli," he said softly. His voice sounded small, fragile, but there was a confidence in his tone, a courage that had carried him across star systems to reach this place. The princess smiled gently. "That is enough," she said. Her voice, though soft, carried authority. "He will learn, and we will help him. But first, he will live as a guest in our home. He is a friend, not an enemy." The court remained tense. Chancellor Maris frowned. "A guest? In the palace? And you expect us to accept him without question?" he asked. Lyra's gaze swept over the courtiers, calm but firm. "He has shown me qualities that are rare even among our kind: curiosity, creativity, courage. I trust him. You will too, in time." Some courtiers exchanged doubtful glances. Others looked thoughtful. It was true that humans had been underestimated for centuries. The princess had seen it firsthand during her travels. They were small, fragile by most measures, yet they had a resourcefulness that no other species possessed. Eli had shown her that in ways that no Veyronan could anticipate. As the initial tension settled slightly, Eli was guided through the palace corridors by Lyra. The walls were made of crystal, smooth and cool under his fingertips. Light refracted in patterns that danced across the floor, making it seem as if the walls themselves were alive. The air was scented faintly with something sweet and clean, like fresh rain on metal. He marveled at everything, and for the first time since leaving his home planet, he felt a flicker of excitement instead of fear. Lyra spoke softly as they walked. "I know this world is strange. It is not your home. But you will adapt. Humans always do. So?" Eli nodded, a small smile breaking across his face. I hope so," he said. "It's beautiful here, but I don't know if I belong." "You belong?" she said simply. "And soon, others will see why." By the time they reached the guest quarters, word had spread through the palace. Veyronans whispered behind their hands, and the palace drones quietly observed the human boy as he explored his temporary home. Though Eli did not understand their language, he could feel the intensity of their attention. Every step he took was noted, every expression studied. Lyra watched him from the doorway, a mix of pride and concern in her eyes. She had promised herself that she would protect him, guide him, and help him thrive, and she had already seen the beginnings of something extraordinary. Humans were underestimated, yes, but underestimation often created opportunity. Eli had navigated situations that would have confused or overwhelmed even seasoned Veyronans. There was something in him, some spark, that the palace had never seen before. That evening, Eli was invited to the palace atrium, a place where the court often gathered for discussions and ceremonies. He was nervous, unsure of what was expected of him. The court waited, silent and tense, and then Lyra gave a simple instruction: observe and then act if you can. A puzzle had been left in the atrium, a crystal formation that had puzzled court scholars for weeks. Its pieces were meant to fit together in precise patterns representing the planet's history and its energy flows. None of the Veyronans had succeeded in completing it. Eli studied it carefully, his brow furrowed. He did not know the history, the significance, or the purpose in the same way a Veyronan would. He only saw patterns, gaps, and possibilities. After a moment, he reached out, carefully aligning the pieces, testing one fit after another. The court gasped as the crystals clicked together perfectly. Energy flowed through the formation, light radiating outward in patterns that had never been seen before. The palace shimmered in a new brilliance, as if recognizing a harmony it had been missing. The courtiers looked at Eli in stunned silence. Even the most skeptical faces showed astonishment. Lyra's smile was proud, though subtle. "This is why he is here," she said quietly, mostly to herself. Chancellor Maris stepped forward, his expression a mixture of awe and cautious approval. "Remarkable," he admitted, though his voice carried the faintest trace of hesitation.
"It seems. Perhaps we have underestimated the capabilities of your species, Princess."
Eli looked around, feeling a small sense of accomplishment, but also a growing curiosity. I just tried to see it in a way that made sense to me," he said simply. "I didn't know it would do this." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "And that is precisely the point. Sometimes the unfamiliar mind sees solutions that the familiar one cannot. That is the strength humans bring." As the stars rose above the palace, twin moons casting soft light on the crystal spires, Eli felt a mixture of wonder, uncertainty, and determination. He had arrived in a world unlike any other, a world full of strange beings, impossible beauty, and rigid traditions. But he had already begun to show that he was not merely a visitor. He was a force, small but clever, capable of seeing what others could not, and unbeknownst to him, The universe had plans that would test that cleverness, push it to its limits, and reveal just how essential humans might become in the unfolding story of the galaxy. The court may have been stunned, the nobles confused, and the traditions shaken, but Princess Lyra had faith. And Eli, the human child in the palace of Veyrona, had already begun to write a new chapter in the history of a world that had never believed humans could matter. That night, as Eli drifted to sleep in his crystal-filled room, he dreamed not of home, not of fear, but of possibilities. He dreamed of light bending in ways he could never have imagined, of connections forming between beings of different worlds, and of the quiet power of curiosity and courage. And somewhere in the palace, Lyra watched over him, certain that the real adventure had only just begun. The next morning, the palace of Veyrona buzzed with a quiet tension that seemed to hum through the crystal walls. Eli awoke to the soft glow of the twin suns spilling through the high windows of his guest room. Though he had slept soundly, he felt a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. Today would be his first chance to interact more fully with the royal court, and he had a growing sense that his actions would be noticed, not just by Princess Lyra, but by the entire world around him. Lyra entered quietly, her crystalline form reflecting the light as she moved. "Good morning," she said softly, her eyes warm. "Today you will join me in the atrium. It is time for the court to see more of your abilities. You are ready, Eli." Eli blinked, a little nervous. "Abilities? I don't have any special abilities," he said, tugging at his sleeves. "You do," Lyra replied. "Your mind works differently. Humans see possibilities others cannot. That is your ability, Eli." He took a deep breath and followed her through the corridors. The court was already gathering, whispers passing quickly from one Veyronan to another. Today, the tension was sharper than yesterday. Some of the elders had spent the night debating whether the princess had acted wisely. Others were curious, hoping that the human child might prove his worth again. The atrium was larger than Eli remembered, a soaring space filled with floating gardens, crystal pillars, and walls that refracted the sunlight into intricate patterns. At the center, another puzzle had been placed, a massive holographic display showing a complex network of energy lines connecting different parts of the palace and the surrounding city. The display had baffled even the most experienced scholars of Veyrona. Lyra turned to Eli. "This is the court network," she explained. "It maintains the energy balance of the city. Something has been causing instability, and no Veyronan has been able to solve it. We will see if your perspective helps." Eli stared at the glowing lines, feeling a little overwhelmed. The patterns were beautiful but confusing, constantly shifting like liquid light. He stepped closer, crouching slightly as he examined the display from a human point of view, not thinking in terms of strict rules or tradition. The court watched silently. Some observed with skepticism, others with curiosity. Eli's small figure contrasted sharply with the grandeur of the atrium. Yet his focus was unwavering. He touched a few lines, traced some connections, and muttered under his breath. Minutes passed, and then Eli had an idea. Using the simplest method he could think of, he reconnected certain lines based on balance rather than pattern, intuition rather than protocol. Slowly, the network stabilized. Light flowed smoothly through the city's holographic projection, and the court gasped. For the first time, a human had solved a problem that had eluded even the most brilliant Veyronans. Chancellor Maris approached, his expression a mixture of awe and disbelief. "This is remarkable," he said. "You have done what we could not. How did you know?" Eli shrugged, a small smile on his face. "I didn't think about it the same way. I just tried to see what would work." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "That is the human way. You see solutions where others see only complexity. That is why you are here." The court murmured among themselves, and slowly some of the skeptics began to nod in acknowledgement. Eli's success had not only stabilized the network, but it also earned him a tentative respect from those who had doubted him. Over the next few days, Eli began to learn more about Veyronan culture. He practiced their gestures, observed their way of speaking through light and color, and tried to understand their music, which was not sound as humans knew it, but shifts in color and vibration. At first it was overwhelming. He often made mistakes, accidentally startling a courtier with a gesture or misunderstanding a subtle signal. Yet each time, he learned quickly. His mistakes became small lessons, and soon he could navigate the court with surprising skill. More importantly, he began to show the aliens something they had never considered. Humans approached problems differently, not bound by tradition or expectation. Lyra watched his progress with quiet pride. She had known humans were different, but seeing Eli adapt so quickly and influence the court impressed even her. He is teaching them as much as they are teaching him, she thought. One afternoon, as Eli wandered the palace gardens, he discovered a hidden chamber behind a translucent wall. Curiosity led him inside, and he found shelves filled with ancient artifacts, scrolls, and holographic recordings of explorers from distant worlds. Among the records were mentions of humans visiting Veyrona centuries ago. Visitors who had left quickly and been forgotten, their contributions lost to time. Eli traced his fingers over a small crystal globe that projected a star system he recognized from Earth. He felt a strange connection, as if the universe had prepared him for something important. He realized that humans had once played a role in this world, and now he might have to do so again. That evening, Lyra found him in the chamber. "You have discovered something important," she said softly. "Humans have always had potential that others cannot see. You are not here by accident, Eli. You have a purpose." Eli felt both pride and pressure. "I don't know if I'm ready," he admitted. "I'm just a kid." "How can I help a whole planet? Or more?" Lyra smiled. "You will learn, and in time, you will show them that courage and creativity come in many forms, not only in size or strength. That is something your kind does best." Meanwhile, the court continued to observe Eli's presence. Some nobles began to offer him small tasks, asking for his opinion or assistance. Each time Eli approached the challenge with a combination of curiosity and logic. He did not follow traditional methods. Instead, he experimented, tested, and observed. The results were consistently impressive. He helped design a new system for distributing clean energy across the palace gardens. He suggested ways to optimize water flow in the floating gardens that none of the gardeners had considered. And when a small dispute arose between two court scholars over the proper method for a ceremonial lighting, Eli proposed a compromise that satisfied both parties, surprising everyone. Through it all, the princess guided him quietly, letting him act independently but stepping in when necessary. She understood that his value was not only in what he could do, but in how he challenged the status quo. Humans brought perspective that was rare, sometimes unsettling, but undeniably powerful. One afternoon, a delegation from a neighboring planet arrived. They were members of the Interstellar Alliance and had come to observe Veyrona's stability. When they saw Eli, their expressions shifted from curiosity to skepticism. One of them, a tall alien with deep green skin, asked, "Princess, why is a human child among your court? What role does he play in governance or diplomacy?" Lyra's response was calm and deliberate. "He plays a role that is as important as anyone else's. He brings insight and perspective. His presence reminds us that intelligence is not bound by species." The delegation looked unconvinced, but Eli remained composed. He approached the tall alien and demonstrated a simple yet elegant solution to a problem the visitors had been debating for hours. Using a method no one had considered, he reorganized the flow of energy through a display, and the problem was solved in moments. Even the skeptical delegation could not hide their amazement. They exchanged whispers, and for the first time, the human child was being recognized not just by his princess or her court, but by outsiders as well. That evening, Eli and Lyra walked along the palace balcony, overlooking the city bathed in the soft glow of the moons. "Do you see?" Lyra asked, gesturing to the city below. Your actions, your perspective, even your mistakes. They are teaching everyone something new. You are changing how they think, Eli. He looked down at the glowing city, feeling a mixture of pride and wonder.
I'm just a kid, he said quietly. I don't know if I'm ready for all this attention.
You are ready because you do not think like they do, Lyra replied. Sometimes it is the smallest among us who make the biggest difference. Eli smiled, feeling the weight of her words. He realized that he was not merely a visitor or a curiosity. He had a role to play, one that would test his creativity, courage, and compassion in ways he had never imagined. That night, as he lay in his crystal-filled room, Eli thought about the humans who had visited Veyrona long ago and wondered why history had forgotten them. Perhaps it was because they had left too soon. Perhaps it was because their impact was subtle, seen only by those willing to notice. Now he had the chance to leave a mark that no one could ignore. The next morning, Eli awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. He would continue to learn, to explore, and to show the court that humans were more than what they seemed. He would not just survive in this strange world. He would thrive. And in doing so, he would inspire others to see the value of humanity. In the days that followed, Eli's presence became a catalyst for change. The court began to adapt, incorporating some of his suggestions into daily routines. Scholars debated his methods, gardeners adjusted their techniques, and even the delegation from the Interstellar Alliance began to speak of humans in a new light. Eli had arrived as an outsider, a human child in a palace of alien beings, and yet he was beginning to transform the world around him, not with power or force, but with creativity, intelligence, and courage. Princess Lyra watched him with quiet satisfaction, knowing that this was only the beginning. The universe had plans for Eli, and she had no doubt that he would rise to meet them. For now, though, he was learning, growing, and showing that even the smallest human could make a difference in the grand tapestry of the stars. And somewhere deep within the palace, the ancient energy of Veyrona seemed to hum in recognition, acknowledging that a new chapter was beginning, one where humans and Veyronas could work together, learn from each other, and face the challenges of the galaxy side by side. Eli closed his eyes that night, feeling a sense of belonging he had never known before. He was no longer just a visitor. He was part of something larger, something extraordinary. And though he did not yet know all the challenges ahead, he understood one thing clearly. In this world, humans had a place, and he was ready to find it. The morning sun poured through the towering crystal windows of the Veyronan palace, casting long beams of shifting light across the floating gardens. Eli stood on the balcony, gazing at the city below. The twin moons that had bathed the palace in silver the night before were now replaced by a sky filled with the warmth of sunlight. It was another beautiful day, but Eli could sense the tension in the air. The Interstellar Alliance had sent a new delegation, and whispers in the court suggested that his presence was stirring doubt in worlds far beyond Veyrona. Princess Lyra approached him quietly. Her translucent skin shimmered softly in the morning light, reflecting colors that humans could only call pale blues and soft violets. "Ellie," she said, her voice calm but firm, "today you will meet the full delegation. They have questions. They are not used to humans in a place of importance, and they will test you. Are you ready?" Eli took a deep breath, straightening his back. I think so," he replied. He could feel a small flutter of nervousness, but it was accompanied by a growing sense of purpose. Over the past days he had learned much about the palace, the court, and the strange yet fascinating ways of Veyrona. He had already proven that humans could solve problems the Veyronans could not. But this was different. This was not about puzzles or energy networks. It was about diplomacy, trust, and perspective. The delegation arrived in ships that glimmered like liquid metal, descending gracefully into the central plaza. Tall figures stepped forward, their forms elegant and precise, each one radiating authority. They were representatives of the Interstellar Alliance, tasked with ensuring that Veyrona's sudden inclusion of a human did not destabilize relations with other systems. Eli felt a slight chill of fear. He was just a child, yet all eyes would be on him. Inside the palace, the atrium was filled with Veyronan nobles, court scholars, and the visiting delegates. Eli noticed how carefully the Veyronans observed him, their shifting colors reflecting doubt, curiosity, and, in some, cautious respect. Lyra stood beside him, a silent pillar of support. One of the delegates, a tall being with pale green skin and elongated limbs, spoke first. "Princess Lyra," she said, her voice like the chime of bells. "Why is this human child present in your court? What is his role in governance, and what assurances do we have that his presence does not endanger interstellar diplomacy?" Lyra stepped forward, her eyes steady and clear. "This human, Eli, is not a threat. He is here because he offers perspective, insight, and creativity that our kind cannot always see. Yesterday, he stabilized the court network in ways that have amazed even our most skilled scholars. Today, he will demonstrate again that his value is more than symbolic." The delegates exchanged subtle glances, their expressions unreadable. Eli felt a wave of apprehension, but also a quiet determination. He had never spoken to beings so important, yet he understood one thing clearly. He could show them that humans were more than what they expected. Lyra gestured to the central display in the atrium. It was a holographic model of the palace and the surrounding city, illustrating the complex flow of energy between districts, public gardens, and the palace's central systems. The network had been experiencing subtle instability for weeks, a problem that the court and scholars had been unable to fully solve. Eli stepped forward. He studied the hologram, tracing lines with his hands and moving closer to see the shifts in light. Unlike the Veyronans, he did not try to adhere to their strict methods. Instead, he focused on patterns, balance, and efficiency. He noticed subtle discrepancies, gaps in the flow, and areas where energy was unevenly distributed. Quietly, he began to adjust the network, reconnecting lines and rerouting flows based on intuition. The delegates watched, their expressions slowly shifting from skepticism to curiosity. The Veyronan court held its breath. For several tense minutes, Eli worked in silence, moving carefully, observing results, and making adjustments. Then, suddenly, the entire network stabilized. Light flowed smoothly throughout the city, casting vibrant patterns across the atrium walls. The court gasped, and even the delegates leaned forward in amazement. The pale green delegate stepped closer, her eyes wide. "Incredible," she murmured. "A human child has accomplished what our scholars could not. Remarkable." Eli felt a mix of relief and pride. He had done it. He had shown them that humans had unique abilities, not in strength or size, but in perspective, creativity, and adaptability. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes shining with pride. "See," she whispered, "you are teaching them already." The rest of the day passed with less tension than Eli had expected. The delegates asked questions, and Eli answered honestly, demonstrating curiosity and logic. He explained how he approached problems differently, relying on observation and creativity rather than tradition or assumption. Slowly, the delegation began to see the value he offered. By evening, whispers of admiration spread through the court. Despite the praise, Eli could sense underlying tension. Not all were convinced that humans belonged in positions of influence. Some nobles quietly debated whether Lyra's decision would provoke other systems. Others wondered if Eli's abilities were exceptional or if humans in general could be trusted to understand the subtleties of interstellar politics. That night, Eli walked with Lyra along the crystal balcony, overlooking the floating gardens and shimmering city below. The air was cool and fragrant, carrying the scent of unknown flowers and fresh water. "Do you think they will accept me?" he asked quietly. Lyra smiled, a soft glow in her eyes. "Some will. Others may take longer, But you have done what few could. You have shown them that humans offer value beyond what they expect. That is how change begins, Eli. Not with force, but with insight. He nodded, taking in the words. It was strange to think that a small human could influence beings who had lived for centuries, whose minds were sharp and precise in ways humans could not imagine. And yet, he had done it, and he had learned that courage and curiosity mattered more than size or strength. The following days brought new challenges. Eli was asked to participate in council meetings where decisions about the city and diplomatic relations were discussed. He listened carefully, asking questions, offering suggestions, and occasionally surprising everyone with ideas that were both simple and effective. He also explored the palace further, discovering hidden rooms and ancient libraries. Some contained holographic histories, showing past visitors and their achievements. He learned that humans had visited Veyrona long ago, leaving faint traces that had been largely forgotten. Seeing this history gave him a sense of connection, a realization that perhaps humans were always meant to influence worlds beyond their own. One afternoon, a sudden complication arose. A minor but intricate energy imbalance appeared in the palace's outer district. The delegation and court scholars had been unable to predict or correct it. Eli stepped forward once again. He examined the system, noting irregularities in flow patterns that no one had observed. He made small adjustments, redirecting energy along pathways that mimicked natural patterns he had seen in his studies. Slowly, the imbalance corrected itself. The delegation murmured in approval, the court clapped softly, and even some skeptics began to nod. Eli felt a quiet thrill of satisfaction. Each success built not only his confidence, but also the trust of those around him. Yet not everything was simple. Some nobles continued to challenge his presence, questioning whether humans could truly be allies in governance or diplomacy. The tall green delegate asked directly during a council meeting, "Can humans truly understand our ways? Can they respect our traditions while offering meaningful insight?" Eli thought carefully before answering. "I do not know everything about your world," he said honestly, "but I can observe, learn, and try. I can see things from a different angle. That is something my kind has always done well. We may be small, but we notice things that others miss. That is how we can help." His words, simple as they were, carried weight. Lyra's eyes glimmered with pride. Even the skeptical delegates began to see that his perspective was not a threat, but a gift. By the end of the week, Eli had become more than a visitor. He was a participant, a bridge between humans and Veyronans, a living example of cooperation and understanding. Even the palace staff, initially wary, began to seek his advice on small matters. His curiosity, creativity, and courage were changing the culture around him. Subtly, but undeniably. Late one night, Lyra found him sitting alone in the gardens, gazing at the stars above. "Do you ever wonder why you were brought here?" she asked, sitting beside him. Eli nodded slowly. "I think maybe it's because humans can see things differently. Maybe I was meant to remind them of that." Lyra placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Perhaps. But also because you have the courage to step forward, to act, even when others doubt you. That is why you are here. That is why you matter." Eli smiled faintly, feeling the weight of her words and the truth within them. He had started as a small, uncertain human child in an alien court, but he was beginning to understand his purpose. His creativity, empathy, and courage were tools more powerful than any weapon. And as he looked up at the stars, he felt a spark of anticipation. There were larger challenges ahead, ones that would test his ingenuity, his insight, and his ability to bridge worlds. Yet he was ready. He had learned that humans could make a difference, not through force, but through intelligence, empathy, and determination. In the quiet of the palace gardens, surrounded by alien flora and the soft glow of crystal spires, Eli made a promise to himself. He would continue to learn, to observe, and to contribute. He would show that humans, no matter how small or underestimated, could influence the fate of worlds. And he would do it not by competing with strength or tradition, but by embracing what made his kind unique: creativity, courage, and the unwavering curiosity to see possibilities where others saw none. By the end of the third part of his journey, Eli had not only earned the respect of the Veyronan court and the interstellar delegates, but had begun to weave the threads of a new understanding between species. The palace, once filled with doubt and tension, now buzzed with quiet anticipation. The human child had become a symbol not of conflict or power, but of collaboration, insight, and hope. And somewhere deep within the palace, hidden in the crystal walls and ancient energy networks, the world itself seemed to recognize the change. A new chapter had begun, one where humans and Veyronans could work together, think together, and face the unknown as partners. The universe, wide and mysterious, was waiting for them, and for Eli, the small human with a perspective that could shift worlds. The morning light fell gently across the palace of Veyrona, turning the crystal spires into a cascade of soft colors that danced across the floating gardens. Eli stood on the balcony, his eyes tracing the streets of the city below. There was a quiet tension in the air, more serious than before. News had arrived that a massive energy surge, unpredictable and powerful, was forming in the outer districts of the city. Scholars, council members, and the interstellar delegates gathered urgently to discuss the situation, but no one seemed to have a solution. Princess Lyra approached him, her form shimmering in the morning sun. "Eli," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder, "this is the moment you have been preparing for. The surge is unlike anything the palace has faced in centuries. It is not dangerous in the way weapons are dangerous, but if left unchecked, it could disrupt the city's entire energy network. We need your help." Eli swallowed hard. The court network, the floating gardens, and the entire palace energy system had all been stabilized before. But this was different. This surge was vast, complex, and unpredictable. He took a deep breath, feeling a mix of fear and determination. I'll try," he said quietly. He followed Lyra to the atrium, which was already filled with worried Veyronans and visiting delegates. Holographic displays showed the energy surge as a glowing, shifting mass slowly expanding through the outer districts. Scholars had attempted multiple methods to redirect it, but each failed. The surge twisted and shimmered unpredictably, responding poorly to the palace's standard systems. Eli approached the main console, examining the energy patterns with careful eyes. He traced the lines and connections, noting the imbalances that caused instability. Unlike the Veyronans, who relied on tradition, precise calculations, and rigid protocols, Eli approached the problem intuitively. He observed the patterns, considering the flow of energy as a living system rather than a static network. The court watched silently. Some were skeptical, uncertain that a human child could solve such a complex challenge. Others had already begun to recognize his potential, remembering how he had stabilized the court network and the outer district flows before. The room seemed to hold its breath as Eli worked, moving carefully, adjusting connections, and testing small changes. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Slowly, Eli began to notice a pattern within the chaos. The surge was not random. It moved like water, following paths of least resistance, responding to slight shifts in energy balance. He realized that the solution was not to force the energy into strict channels, but to guide it, to create harmony between the flow and the city's energy networks. "Follow me," Eli said to Lyra, who moved beside him silently. "We need to adjust the outer conduits and redirect the flow gently. Not forcefully, but like a river around stones." Lyra nodded, understanding immediately. She gestured to the court, asking scholars to assist in small adjustments while keeping the system flexible. Veyronans were trained to follow rules precisely, but Eli's method required creativity, improvisation, and trust in intuition. Slowly, the scholars adjusted, following Eli's guidance. The energy surge responded, shifting gradually as pathways opened Energy diverted, and pressure released. Light flowed in smoother patterns, the glowing mass shrinking and stabilizing. The holographic display reflected this change, spreading clarity through the room. Veyronans whispered in astonishment. The delegates leaned forward, eyes wide with admiration. After what felt like an eternity, the surge dissipated completely, leaving the palace and city networks fully stable. A hush fell over the atrium, followed by cautious applause. Eli stepped back, breathing heavily, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. He had done it. Chancellor Maris approached, his expression a mix of awe and respect. "Eli," he said, "you have accomplished what no Veyronan has managed in centuries. Your perspective, your intuition, it had saved the city. Truly remarkable." The delegates nodded, murmuring among themselves. "Perhaps," one said quietly, "we have underestimated humans for too long." Lyra smiled, her eyes bright with pride. "No," she said gently. "It is not underestimation, it is recognition. Humans have unique abilities, and Eli has shown us what they can accomplish." Eli felt a warm glow of satisfaction, but he also felt something deeper. He understood now that his role was not simply to solve problems, it was to bridge worlds, to show that humans, though small and physically fragile, could influence great systems through intelligence, creativity, and courage. In the following days, the court began to change subtly. The palace scholars, inspired by Eli's methods, began to combine their traditional approaches with new ideas, blending rigidity with flexibility. Delegates from other planets spoke of humans in a new light, recognizing the value of perspective, intuition, and ingenuity. Even some skeptical nobles began to reconsider their assumptions, observing that Eli's calm courage had inspired others to try new approaches rather than clinging to convention. Eli continued his learning and exploration. He discovered hidden archives, ancient records of human visitors long forgotten, and energy systems designed centuries ago that humans had helped stabilize. He felt a deep connection to these past explorers, as if history had prepared him for this moment. He realized that humans were not merely small and fragile. They were adaptable, perceptive, and capable of understanding systems in ways no one else could. One evening, as Eli and Lyra walked through the palace gardens, he asked, "Do you think humans can really help change the galaxy?" Lyra paused, watching the twin suns set in a cascade of colors over the floating gardens. "They already do," she said. "Not all humans, but those with courage, curiosity, and creativity. You are proof that even one person, one human, can make a difference. You remind us that intelligence and bravery are not bound by species." Eli smiled, feeling both pride and responsibility. He knew that his actions had already influenced the palace, the court, and even the interstellar delegates. But he also understood that his journey was just beginning. Challenges would continue to arise, some larger, some unpredictable, but he was ready. The next morning brought another opportunity. The interstellar delegation requested a demonstration of cooperation, asking Eli to propose improvements for the city's energy distribution on a larger scale. The palace council, curious and eager, allowed him to present his ideas. Eli stood at the center of the atrium, looking at the gathered audience. He suggested combining human intuition with Veyronan precision, creating flexible systems that could adapt to change while maintaining stability. He proposed new paths for energy flow, inspired by natural patterns like rivers, wind, and the movement of light. He suggested ways to enhance gardens, conserve energy, and improve life for citizens without changing traditions too drastically. The delegates listened carefully, nodding at some ideas and asking questions about others. Each time Eli answered thoughtfully, demonstrating both curiosity and understanding. The Veyronans, initially skeptical, began to see the wisdom in his approach. It was not magic, it was observation, creativity, and courage applied to complex problems. By the end of the demonstration, the palace council and delegates were impressed. They saw that humans offered something rare, the ability to notice what others overlooked, to approach problems differently, and to find solutions where rigidity might fail. Eli had not only helped stabilize the palace, he had begun to inspire a new way of thinking. As the delegation departed, Lyra walked with Eli along the balcony once more. "Do you see what you've done?" she asked. "You've changed minds, not just systems. You've reminded everyone that even the smallest human can influence great worlds." Eli looked out at the city, the floating gardens, and the crystal towers. "I think I understand now," he said. "It's not about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about seeing possibilities and helping others see them too." Lyra nodded. "Exactly. And that is why humans matter. Your creativity, courage, and perspective are gifts not only to Veyrona, but to the galaxy itself. You've proven that even one human can make a difference." Over the following weeks, Eli became a trusted member of the royal household. The palace adapted, blending human creativity with Veyronan tradition. Scholars learned to ask questions differently, courtiers embraced new ways of thinking, and even the interstellar delegates returned to their planets with a newfound respect for humanity. Eli's actions had created ripples, slowly expanding beyond the palace walls. One evening, Lyra and Eli stood in the palace atrium, watching the twin moons rise. "Do you ever wonder what comes next?" Eli asked. Lyra smiled, her eyes reflecting the glow of the moons. "Always," she said. "But I know this. Whatever comes, humans will have a role. They bring something unique, something powerful. And you, Eli, have shown them how to use it wisely." Eli nodded, feeling a sense of purpose he had never known. He had started as a small, uncertain child in a palace full of alien beings. Now he understood that he could influence worlds, not through strength or force, but through intelligence, creativity, and courage. Humans were small, yes, but their potential was vast, and Eli had only begun to uncover it. That night, he walked through the palace gardens one last time before bed, gazing at the stars above. He imagined distant worlds, challenges he had not yet faced, and possibilities waiting to be discovered. He understood that his journey was far from over. The universe was wide, full of unknowns. But he also knew that humans had something special to offer: insight, adaptability, and the courage to step forward when others hesitated. And in the quiet of the palace, surrounded by the gentle glow of crystal and the soft hum of energy flowing through the city, Eli felt a deep sense of belonging. He was part of something larger, something extraordinary. He was a human child, small yet capable, fragile yet brave, standing at the center of worlds that were beginning to see the value of his kind. The royal court, once stunned by his arrival, now looked to him with admiration. The interstellar delegates, once skeptical, now spoke of humans with respect. And Princess Lyra, proud and wise, knew that the decision to bring him home had changed the course of her kingdom. Eli had begun as a visitor, a human child in an alien world. But now, he was a bridge, a symbol of unity, and a living proof that courage, creativity, and empathy could reshape the universe. The palace, the court, and the galaxy itself had witnessed the quiet power of humanity, and the journey was only beginning. As the moons bathed the palace in silver light, Eli smiled to himself. For the first time in his life, he truly understood that being human was not about size, strength, or expectation. It was about curiosity, courage, and the willingness to see what others could not. And with that understanding, he was ready to face whatever the universe had in store. In the end, the palace of Veyrona had not only been stabilized, it had been transformed. And the small human child, once a mere guest, had become a symbol of hope, ingenuity, and the quiet, unstoppable power of humanity. The alien royal court was stunned. The princess returned home with a human child. Sci-fi best.